Shortly after midnight on September 19, 1980, a quiet Arkansas hillside hid one of the most powerful weapons on Earth, a Titan II nuclear missile armed with a 9-megaton warhead. That night, a single drop tool would trigger a chain of events so bizarre it seemed impossible until a 110-foot missile effectively launched itself. The Titan II was America's doomsday weapon. Each carried a warhead 3 times more powerful than every bomb dropped in World War II combined. Buried in underground silos across the Midwest, these missiles stood ready to fire in under a minute, meant to survive a Soviet first strike and retaliate instantly. At Launch Complex 3747 near the small town of Damascus, 2 young Air Force technicians were on routine duty, unaware they were sitting atop a bomb capable of ending millions of lives. The Titan II was a 2-stage liquid fuel rocket standing as tall as a 10-story building. Its Aerozyne 50 fuel and nitrogen tetroxide oxidizer were hypergolic, meaning they ignited on contact. The system was efficient but unforgiving. Even a pinhole leak could create a deadly cloud or an explosive mix. Crews drilled constantly, rehearsing checklists meant to keep that volatile cocktail stable. But technology this powerful left no margin for human error. At 6:30 p.m. on September 18th, technicians Senior Airman David Powell and Airman Jeffrey Plum entered the silo to perform a simple pressure check. While working high on the missiles platform, Powell carried a long ratchet with a heavy 8-pound socket. One slip, and the socket tumbled more than 70 feet. It bounced off a thrust-mounting ring and struck the thin metal skin of the first-stage fuel tank. A sharp hiss followed. Aerozine fuel, highly toxic and explosively reactive, began spraying into the silo. The puncture in the Titan's first-stage fuel tank hissed like a living thing. Hypergolic aerozyne spilled into the silo, evaporating into a toxic mist. In seconds, the air became dangerous to breathe. In minutes, it could ignite with explosive force. Technicians sealed their respirators and radioed the control center above. Alarms blared as pressure sensors screamed warnings the silo crew had only rehearsed in drills. Within minutes, senior officers ordered an evacuation, but leaving a leaking Titan was no simple escape. Every exit required passing through heavy blast doors and elevator shafts already filling with fumes. Outside, local sheriff's deputies and Air Force security cordoned off the quiet Arkansas countryside. Families along the 2-lane roads were awakened and told to stay indoors, unaware a 9-megaton warhead lay yards beneath their feet. Specialist teams from Little Rock Air Force Base sped toward Damascus. Inside their trucks, they reviewed emergency manuals that, ironically, offered no playbook for a ruptured Titan. Above the silo, the giant concrete launch doors, designed to slide open only in war, remained sealed. Pressure and temperature gauges inside showed a volatile stew. Any spark could ignite the leaking fuel and oxidizer, creating a blast capable of lifting the 740-ton doors skyward. By dawn, the leak was worse. Aerozine pooled at the silo's base while nitrogen tetroxide fumes, heavier than air, cascaded downward like invisible fog. Commanders debated their next move. If the fuel continued to escape, pressure could rupture the tank entirely. But sending men back inside risked igniting the very explosion they feared. Every option carried the same terrible possibility. The missile's 9-megaton warhead torn from its cradle and hurled skyward by a fireball. By mid-morning, a specialist team in heavy protective gear prepared to re-enter the launch complex. Their mission was simple but lethal: check pressure readings and determine whether the missile's tanks were near rupture. Inside, the heat was oppressive. The hiss of leaking fuel was constant, like a giant snake uncoiling in the dark. One wrong step could generate a spark and turn the entire chamber into a furnace. Technicians in the control center monitored every move. Radio chatter was clipped and spare, every word carried weight. Engineers argued quietly about whether to vent more pressure or seal the silo entirely. Above ground, state police widened the evacuation zone. Residents of Damascus and nearby towns were urged to leave. a surreal exodus of farmers and truckers who only knew that something dangerous, something nuclear, was leaking beneath their fields. Hours dragged on. The missile's enormous first-stage tank, weakened by the puncture, continued to lose pressure. Inside, the concentration of volatile fumes approached a critical threshold. Every specialist on site understood the math. Just the static from a nylon suit could set off a chain reaction. As dusk fell, commanders faced an impossible choice: attempt to repair or abandon the site and pray the missile would not explode on its own. Darkness settled over Damascus as a cold September wind swept across the farmland. Searchlights cut pale cones through the humid air while state troopers redirected traffic miles from the site. Inside the command trailer, Air Force officers studied shifting pressure readings and knew time was running out. Colonel Gene Price, the on-scene commander, faced a decision that no checklist covered: send a team back into a chamber filled with explosive vapors, or risk the Titan II rupturing on its own. Just after 10 p.m., Senior Airman David Livingston volunteered to re-enter the silo with Sergeant Jeff Kennedy. Wearing airtight suits and breathing through heavy SCBAs, they descended the metal stairs into a haze so thick their flashlights formed visible cones. Their task was to attach a pressure gauge to the missile's oxidizer tank and confirm the leak's status. But as they reached level 2, sensors recorded a sudden spike in concentration, fuel vapor nearing the lower explosive limit. Command immediately ordered the men to evacuate. They turned to climb, then a violent sound thundered up from the silo's depths. At 10:30 p.m., a massive blast ripped through Launch Complex 374-7. The first stage fuel ignited, creating a fireball that hurled the 740-ton silo doors skyward like cardboard. The Titan II's second stage rocketed upward, without guidance, without orders, like a runaway spear of fire. Its 9-megaton nuclear warhead separated and tumbled into the dark Arkansas sky. Miraculously, the warhead's safety mechanisms worked. It crashed harmlessly into a ditch a few hundred yards away, its conventional explosives intact but unfired. The explosion shattered windows miles away and sent a rolling shockwave across the Arkansas River Valley. Residents who had ignored evacuation orders fled in panic, headlights weaving through the dark. Rescue teams rushed toward the smoking crater, unsure whether another blast or radiation leak might follow. They found twisted steel, concrete shards, and a gaping hole where the silo had been. Airman David Livingston was killed by falling debris. Several others were injured. His sacrifice and the quick actions of fellow crew members prevented a catastrophe of unimaginable scale. Before first light, recovery teams scoured the smoking Arkansas hillside. Their top priority was the Titan II's 9-megaton W-53 warhead, still missing in the dark. Hazmat crews in full protective suits picked through twisted steel and steaming concrete. Hours later, a helicopter spotted the warhead resting intact in a drainage ditch more than 100 meters from the silo. Its safety interlocks had worked perfectly, no radiation leaked, and the high explosives inside never detonated. News of the explosion spread quickly. Residents of Damascus watched National Guard convoys roll past their homes while television crews set up on nearby hillsides. For the first time, many Americans realized that nuclear weapons weren't just distant Cold War abstractions. They were hidden in cornfields and cattle pastures across the country. Pentagon officials scrambled to reassure the public. They confirmed that the warhead's safety design had prevented disaster, but admitted the Titan II fleet relied on aging technology and hazardous propellants. An exhaustive investigation revealed how a single drop tool had cascaded into near catastrophe. Engineers documented corrosion, outdated safety gear, and maintenance procedures that left little room for human error. The Air Force overhauled training, upgraded monitoring systems, and accelerated plans to retire the Titan II missiles altogether. By the late 1980s, the entire fleet was dismantled, its silos sealed with concrete. For residents of Damascus, the memory lingered. Some still remember the orange flash that turned night to day, the pressure wave that rattled windows miles away, and the knowledge that their town had narrowly avoided becoming a radioactive crater. The Damascus accident remains a case study in the razor-thin margin of safety surrounding nuclear weapons. Experts point out that the W-53 warhead's passive safety features, redundant locks, insensitive explosives, and environmental sensors worked exactly as designed. But the incident also exposed how small human mistakes can ignite chain reactions. A single slip of an 8-pound socket nearly triggered the largest unintentional nuclear explosion in history. Today, the Titan II is gone, but its lessons remain vivid. Modern missile systems use solid fuel, advanced sensors, and automated safeguards, yet they still depend on fallible people. Visitors to the Titan Missile Museum in Arizona can stand beside a preserved silo and imagine the immense forces once hidden underground. The Damascus silo itself is sealed, a quiet, grassy mound with only a small plaque to hint at. The night the Cold War nearly turned hot. On that September night in 1980, a simple maintenance job spiraled into chaos. A socket slipped, fuel leaked, and a Titan II missile became a self-launching rocket, its 9-megaton warhead hurtling through the Arkansas darkness. The Damascus accident stands as both warning and reassurance. Even when technology fails and humans err, carefully designed safety systems can prevent catastrophe. Yet it also reminds us that when we build machines capable of ending civilization, the smallest human slip can summon the unthinkable.